Hey, what's up? This is Autumn here. You might have noticed that recently I've been experimenting a little bit more on this channel and over on Instagram with some different silhouettes, different items of clothing that I perhaps wouldn't have worn before, and this week is certainly no different because it's all about possibly one of the most extravagant pieces of clothing that I've ever bought, the Y-3 Sailcloth Poncho. It's the one that's been sitting there behind me for the last couple of months now. I've never really seen anything like this, and although yes, it is stupidly expensive, I felt like I just had to pick this up and take a look at some different ways of wearing this. Like, how do you integrate something that is so crazy into an outfit? And for the sake of contrast, I also happen to have here a Nike equivalent. So this coming in at a much more affordable price. It's a far more stripped back, should we say, version of that Y-3 jacket, but it still has some similarities, so I think they're worth talking about together. And that could resemble a kind of affordable alternative of the very high fashion, very luxury priced Y-3 Sailcloth Poncho. Both of them, to an extent, fit into that more lunar core side of things rather than tech ninja kind of vibes. There's definitely some lunar core DNA in this stuff. It's not really a style I've experimented that much with, and I don't have too much in my wardrobe that really fits that lunar core aesthetic, but this is a little bit of a starting point, shall we say, and it's certainly something that I'd like to experiment more with on this channel, so let me know if you guys like the look of this kind of thing, and I'll definitely look to include it more in the future. Anyway, the Y-3 Sailcloth Poncho came in at £800 retail, which is just over $1,000. The Nike version came in under £100, maybe $120, $150, that kind of price. So a massive difference between the two, but we're going to check them both out, and at the end, you can tell me which one of the two you thought was the best. But first of all, let's talk about the main event here, the Y-3 Sailcloth Poncho. This is not really a traditional techwear garment. It's quite different to what I would normally feature on this channel. First of all, features-wise, it's pretty light. You've got two pockets on this, one for each hand. You've got a little method of fastening and unfastening the sleeve, so you can have some different fits. You can cinch in the bottom of this jacket using some cords. There's some of that around the collar as well, but that is pretty much it. It came with this cute tiny little bag as well, which I actually think looks quite nice. Got the Y-3 branding on there as well. You can either wear this integrated with the jacket because there are some points where you can thread this buckle through, or you can just wear it by yourself if you want to inject a little bit of Y-3 style into an outfit. Even with that bag, this jacket is pretty light on features, and despite its massive volume, it's not particularly protective either, in that there's no hood, and the single layer fabric is not really that water resistant either, so don't expect this to hold up in a really heavy rainstorm or anything like that. It's just not going to happen. But did we think that this jacket was really going to be a high performance garment? No, not really. We can't pretend that the utility value of a jacket like this is going to be super high, but that's not really why you would buy something like this. Let's take a bit of a closer look at the material here. That sailcloth I mentioned, no, not very water resistant, but it does have some really cool properties. This is super lightweight, so despite the massive amount of coat that you're getting here, it's actually pretty light. That means A, it's real nice for summer because it's not going to weigh you down, and it means that you can very easily get away with wearing very few layers underneath it. This fabric is also really soft, so it's very pliable, it's very quiet too, and it feels really nice against the skin, which is quite unusual for a piece of outerwear. Again, that lends itself to being worn in much warmer conditions, because you can very easily get away with just a t-shirt underneath this. It's soft, it's silky, it's luxurious, but it feels like it has a bit of strength to it too. It's just all around really pleasant to wear. But the best thing about this fabric, partly because of the weight, partly because of that softness, the way that it moves, it really seems to have a life of its own. And in motion, this thing looks really nice. That's something that I mentioned with the acronym CAPE a couple of weeks back, but it massively applies to the Y-3 Sailcloth Poncho as well. It's like a jellyfish or something. It just moves around and flows. It almost has its own life to it. And again, that's something that's quite unique for a piece of outerwear and really makes this stand out, makes it very different to a lot of its peers. The translucency of this fabric combined with this multicolored print in all these kind of watery green and blue tones, there's some brown in there as well even, all of that combined is a really unique look. I think it looks great. And yes, although there is actually some quite large Y-3 branding on this, it's actually so big and at such a weird angle that you don't really notice it at all, so that's pretty pretty good. Most materials, certainly not ones with the nylon ripstop elements that you'll see in this jacket close up, can really match that ability to get such a complex pattern in there, so it's just another thing that makes this jacket super different to anything else that I've really seen. The overall look of this jacket is obviously super striking with how oversized those proportions are, how much it drapes, how flowy it is, just how long it is. It has a very high fashion look to it, shall we say. It just isn't something that you will ever find an equivalent of on the high street, certainly not a close equivalent at least. This purchase definitely feels a bit hard to justify on the basis that you are certainly paying over the odds, A, for this being a Y-3 product, which, let's face it, does command a premium and their retail prices can often be quite high, and B, for the aesthetic of this simply being so different to anything else that's on the market, that does give them the ability to charge a little bit of a premium, because where else are you going to get something like this? Basically nowhere. But that said, the material definitely has a lot to answer for in that it's pretty good, it feels luxurious, it feels nice, and the actual quality of it does feel better than your average product. And for a Y-3 piece, that's actually pretty good, because one of their main criticisms, you'd say, is that a lot of their products are just made of cotton or very basic materials. So at least they are doing something pretty interesting on the material front with this one, and that definitely goes some way towards justifying the price. This is certainly going to get you noticed though, which, depending on how you look at it, could be a positive or a negative. In more fashion forward circles or more trendy locations, shall we say, this will probably get you a good amount of positive attention. But if you go down the pub with your mates, they're probably going to roast you for buying an £800 jacket that makes it look like you're a homeless person. Especially when you're pairing this with other oversized or more unusual things. So I've been wearing it in this video with the Oakley and Samuel Ross track pants, which are pretty big and they have this really cool reflective finish, and ordinarily they look pretty over the top and pretty wild. But here, with this jacket, it's all good. The Coldwall Vomero 5 as well is normally a shoe that looks very over the top, but when you're combining it with these really big oversized things, you barely even notice it. On the top half, I think you've got quite a bit of freedom because you can wear things that have a little bit of colour. Because of that translucency, it will just shine through a little bit. But do you need to wear anything too much? I don't think so, because as I say, this is a more summer ready jacket. This works quite nicely with a short sleeve t-shirt, so I don't think you need to go too over the top there. Just have a play around with what kinds of colours will work, what kinds of things will really suit this jacket and the different tones that it's got going on. And I feel like in terms of the outfit, very similar things could be said of the Nike lab coat that I also picked up. So with that in mind, let's take a look at that too, and I'm going to be wearing very similar things so you can get a good sense of how you can wear these two kind of different jackets in fairly similar ways to get that quite interesting, quite different, maybe a little bit Lunar inspired look. Potentially the weaknesses of the sailcloth jacket are partly in the cost and partly in the level of craziness, in that it is so over the top and different. You might actually struggle to wear it in a lot of normal scenarios. Well, I think the Nike lab coat goes some way to alleviating those problems. Not only is the cost much lower, coming in at under £100, although it still does have an oversized and quite a long silhouette, it is certainly very reined in compared to that sailcloth poncho. I believe this was designed as something to wear to and from sports training, so it's just a very light covering, and as a result I think it has some of the spirit of the sailcloth poncho in there, and the material similarly is quite thin, quite delicate, and it has that translucency about it too. Unfortunately, you do lose the element of luxury with this material. It does still feel quite soft and quite nice, but it's not on the level of the sailcloth poncho. It's also very noticeable in terms of how artificial it feels. It feels very staticky as well, so I definitely wouldn't wear this when you're working on your gaming PC or something like that. But you'll notice it still falls a little bit like that Y-3 poncho. It still has some of the life, some of the energy to it, and it does still move around quite freely. So it is a bit like a stripped back version of that. And I feel like as a result, as I'm showing in this video, you can kind of wear it in a similar way with some similar, more oversized pieces of clothing and not have them look too over the top and not have them take too much attention away, but just keeping everything nice and balanced without quite having that like crazy high fashion look of the Y-3 poncho. The main thing that I don't like about this aesthetically is that it does have a massive Nike swoosh on the back, and I know that the Y-3 jacket also has big Y-3 branding, but it's much more noticeable on this Nike coat because the rest of it is so plain. I guess it makes it not look as much like a lab coat, but it kind of, I don't know, I would prefer it to be more minimalist, more futuristic, but at the price, I guess you can't have everything. Also, a weird note on the fit of this, it seems like the arms join up like really late, so there's quite a big area under your arms, and that means that it can pull a bit weirdly, like if you're moving around and reaching for things and stuff. But I guess that's partly because this is designed as a unisex garment, so I got this in a medium, and it does seem to fit me, it looks fine on me, but yeah, there is this kind of weird underarm aspect to it. The Y-3 poncho was a medium as well, although I think they did only sell it in one size, and also this thing is so massive and oversized, you could have worn this one size down or 2 sizes up or whatever, and it would still be massively oversized, so why even bother? So 2 jackets there, which are aesthetically kind of going in the same experimental direction and are quite different to what a lot of people would associate with techwear, but I think are pretty cool and certainly worth considering. Would I recommend either of these jackets? Probably not, to be honest, in that their utility value is just not as good as a lot of other things that I talk about, so I would purely consider these from an aesthetic point of view. If you think they look cool, if you want to wear these kinds of Lunacore inspired outfits that have this look to them, but you're not so worried about like, oh, I need to carry a bunch of different things, or like I need to be really protected from rain or whatever, these are very much summer jackets for sure. They're very lightweight. So approach it with that in mind. That's definitely the more productive way to look at either of these things. But let me know which of the two you prefer, the crazy over-the-top high fashion Y-3 poncho or the more refined, the more reserved Nike, more affordable option as well. Let me know which of the two sides you fall on there. I know normally I'm team Nike, but kind of feeling the Adidas Y-3 on this one. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like, it is much appreciated. And we will see you next week with another one. Shout out to this god-awful trim. This is definitely going. So next week, I'll be looking much better. Shout out to iBlackfeathers, kind of surprised that no one has tried integrating a CB radio with a hat or something, like ultimate tactical gear. And shout out to Francis for giving his thoughts on the Steven cargos in the Uniden video last week. I did think that with my cropped cargos, I actually kind of liked them, apart from the fact that they were just way too short, so it's good to know that the full-length version is actually pretty good. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. If you want to catch some more stuff, there's going to be links going up there. And if you haven't subscribed yet, definitely consider doing so, because there's going to be loads more cool techwear stuff coming up. Just hit the little button, ring the bell, do all that cool stuff, and yeah, you'll be a cool dude.